Good morning, boys and girls. Today, by way of introductory book introductions, it brings me great pleasure, with a little bit of ambivalence, but not much, I'll explain that later, to introduce David R. Hawkins. These are late 20th century, early 21st century books by a psychiatrist who spent most of his life not just taking care of patients, but also dealing with waking up, which he did in a very colorful fashion and a very remarkable fashion. He was a colorful guy, David R. Hawkins. Now, I really recommend, and this is strange because I recommend it ahead of the videos, ahead of the book, that you check out one of his hour-long video lectures. The later, the better. Oops, I gotta fix this. Oops. Sorry. The sound should be better now. The sound should be better. Okay, and so in this video lectures, his empathy, his humor, his insight, and his whole aura is very present and very palpable and very salutary, I might add. So as you can tell, I like this guy a lot. Now, this book, should I say more about him? He had a huge psychiatric practice in New York, got into all kinds of trouble because psychiatrists, especially back then, any of this stuff would get you in trouble. But he went he did his thing anyway, and ended up writing a bunch of books and doing a bunch of really superb lectures. My ambivalence I'll talk about later. So in this book, Power versus Force, I think this may be one of the first in a series of, I don't know, it looks like basically 6 major books, and then there's minor books, numbering I think up to 10 or something like that. He also worked on orthomolecular psychiatry with Linus Pauling, and which is a big vitamin C and antioxidant thing. I don't recommend that necessarily. All right. So in this book, he does there's a passage on the front, which is a version of the Tao Te Ching. Kind of not a great translation, but not okay, and it goes, "The skillful are not obvious. They appear to be simple-minded. Those who know this know the patterns of the absolute. To know the patterns is subtle power. The subtle power moves all things and has no name." So let's do just a quick translation into something a little bit more familiar. The skillful are not apparent. They appear simple-minded. Those who know this know the patterns of the absolute. To know the patterns is to know the way. The way moves all things and has no name. So that would be the Tao, the way. That which one cannot give a name to because it's so comprehensive. Although people do call it the Tao or call it the way. At any rate, this man had a Christian background, very American background, and he's not that much older than I am, which may explain some of his appeal to me. But many other people were like this book. Now, so this book is, I'll just summarize the major point. The major point is some people and governments use force when they should use power. They try and force things in their life or in the world or economically or whatever. Whereas if they were more advanced, they would understand that power, which emanates from according with the way, is far more effective with fewer side effects and fewer undesirable what do they call externalities. So in this book, which is called The Hidden Determinants, Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, it's mainly about this different. Oh, wait a minute. There's a quick sentence I saw there. Oh, I may have lost it. Power attracts where force repels. See the difference between power and force? The American government likes to use force when, if it just took the moral high ground and became, what it could be, it could have much more power in the world by virtue of its excellence. And so when you accord with the way, you ultimately have far more effect than if you try to use force or you try and force anything. So this goes for individuals, and this goes for nation states, etc. Now, with regard to the ambivalence, David Hawkins was also a kinesiologist, and he developed a method using kinesthesiology to tell truth from false. Now, I don't doubt that it worked for him, but I'm reticent and to recommend it for most people, because number one, to use his tool, you would have to be fairly clear and fairly clean, which most people aren't. And secondly, it's probably fairly idiosyncratic. And so I'm not saying ignore it, but I'm saying it wouldn't hurt to just skip over the kinesthesiology parts, because it's so circumscribed in a particular place and time and person. So I'll probably introduce others of his books, but if you just get that one point, that never use force, use power, something like that. You rarely need force if you have power, and power comes from according with the way. Okay, so that's the book intro. Have you read this book?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I personally was very skeptical about the kinesiology part, because I
Understandable.
tried it with my friends and myself, and it was like coin toss. And so,
I tried it and it got a little bit better results than that, but I agree that for most people it's not a scalable thing. I don't doubt that it worked for him though. But in addition to that, he started developing these scales and this numeral, very American thing where you have, grades or gradations or a scale of illumination or lack thereof. And as I may have mentioned elsewhere, this is not the kind of thing that lends itself to quantification in that way. It's kind of like intelligence. If you try and gauge intelligence using the intelligence test, you're going to miss many, many dimensions of intelligence, right? Because it's a very narrow band. Okay. Questions? Or what have you learned?
yeah, this week I found out how amazing it is to actually do something for excellence and joy without wanting anything to get out of it, or without any greed. It's just so liberating and relaxing.
Bravo. Bravo, bravo, bravo. It is liberating. And sometimes it takes years to learn to do something without expectation of reward. And that expectation of reward, which is a form of desire and sometimes greed, will block the higher impulses. And so that's why, they go on and on about how the Buddhists go on, and so do some of the Hindus, that you have to give up your selfish, individualistic desires, right, in order to be able to receive more refined impulses, or you can't put a word on it, but in order to wake up. Now, one of the ways the Buddhists deal with this is that they understand. So do the Christians. If the Christians just got their act together, just like Jesus said, the Buddhists believe that there's no difference between self and other. As Jesus said, what you do unto the least of these you do unto me, or treat your neighbor as yourself. Those both have mystical meanings. At any rate, the Buddhists, especially the Mahayana, do this in spades. And so rather than work towards individual enlightenment, which would be could be something of an obstacle, frankly, because it's ego oriented, they have the very sophisticated replacement for that, which is to work for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. And that's a hard thing to understand in the beginning, but now that I'm an old man and I can look back, I can see how very sophisticated that approach is, because it keeps you from coning down into your own egoic desires. So good, I can't tell you, that's really, really a major step, probably a huge step, to be able to do something and do it well for the sake of doing it well without trying to get anything. The Tibetan Buddhists do this in another way. They use these large, have you ever seen these large mandalas that they do, the Tibetan Buddhists?
Yeah.
It can take a month to make one of those. So, 4, 5, 6 people take a month to make one of these beautiful sand mandalas. I mean, they're 4 or 5 feet across, or bigger, 6 feet or more. And then at the end of it, they just wipe it all off. And so, good, that's real progress. See, you don't need it. That's the thing. The way this universe is organized, you don't need to have selfish desires. Everything's given to us, and you could do away with that, and you'll do just fine, right?
But yeah, but I did get a couple of follow-ups on that
Good.
afterwards.
All right, good.
So the first one is, I was thinking that even going for excellence, that's still kind of a desire to be the best at it.
Well, okay, it depends on how you use it. I was hearing excellence as simply doing what you're doing it wholeheartedly, doing it with full attention and intention, right? And not worrying about anything else. Now, to me, that's excellence, right? In practice.
Okay.
So, but ask your question. I interrupted you because I think I know where you were going. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me the excellence was basically to be like perfect at it, or like be the best at it.
Nobody's going to know except for you and God, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something you're doing to impress other people or to climb up some hierarchy or anything like that. You do it. What does the Sufis say? Seek God, but not from fear of hell or desire for heaven. And there's technical reasons why that's very important, because, like I said, desire is especially egoic, individual desire, is a relatively coarse frequency, let's say. Frequency is not the right word, but... And it will block, just like a loud noise or a strong flavor will block a more subtle sound or a more subtle taste. The same thing applies here. So gross cognitive desire or physical desire for whatever it may be will block this, right? So it's not because we're trying to impress ourselves or anybody else. This is a technical requirement. Okay. Another question? That's good. This is a good topic.
Yeah, and what I noticed was that even if it is a desire to be excellent, there's still no desperation attached to that. So somehow it's different than other desires.
Yeah, at a certain point, your system's shut down. You're very content to be where you are, doing what you're doing, and nothing else interferes. And I did Tibetan Nundro, and early on, and one of the practices was to make these little mandalas on these brass plates, and you just kind of spread the barley in a circle and build up a mound, and then you put these little representations of little worlds, which were just small marbles in my case, and then you would chant this beautiful Tibetan chant. And there comes a point to where finally the world leaves you, right? And you're just present there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need anything. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want anything. You're just doing what you're doing, right? And this can occur with any practice. And so when you get to that spot, you know you're closer than if you're there trying to say, well, why isn't this working? Why am I not getting what I said I thought I was going to get out of this? And how long is this going to take? And all the other crazy things that interfere with the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that may be why monasteries, I'm sure it has something to do with why monasteries were so popular for so long in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessary, but sometimes they really work.
Mm-hmm.
Follow-up question?
And what I also noticed was the weekend went great because I was only focusing on singing and reading books and the practice. But once the Monday started, then the other stresses started coming back in. So it seems like I can do that only when other affairs are in order.
Correct.
Without that,
Trust in
without that,
God,
I won't
trust
be
in
able
God,
to.
but tie your camel. Right?
Mhm.
That's what that's about. You got to take care of business
Yeah,
first, right?
yeah.
Uh, did it come on Sunday night? When did you
It
start
came
to lose
on,
it?
yeah, yeah, it's Sunday night.
Okay, so now see if you can keep it till Monday morning. Right? You can. Just keep practicing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Drive all efforts
And
into one.
yeah, and what I was also thinking, is it possible to also make all these other activities that I do to keep affairs in order, can I also make them similar to that activity where I'm not,
Absolutely,
where I'm only.
absolutely. I mean, a priori, there's no reason why shining your shoes is
Mhm.
is worse than making a mandala. It's all in the mental attitude.
Mhm.
Ironing a shirt, right? Making a bed.
Mhm.
All of those can be
Mhm.
turned into spiritual practice, and they should. That's what
Mhm.
drive all efforts into one means. So whatever you're
Mhm.
doing, you dedicate it. Your intent is to dedicate it to the pursuit of enlightenment. All right, and gradually that starts to take over, and you have peace in your life for the first time. For many people, I mean, real
So
peace.
that Yeah, and so that's what I started doing from today, like from this Monday. So everything I started to do, so like let's say I am working on a work task, or I'm like going to the market for shopping something. I say, like, I verbally kind of say that I'm dedicating this to enlightenment. And then what happens that it starts another process, which is, if this is actually I'm dedicating to enlightenment, then I should do my best at it.
Yes,
And then with that thought, uh, the other stresses started going down.
absolutely. That's why it's very healthy. There's a chapter in
But yeah,
here
they
called.
don't.
Isn't there a chapter called Religious Practice 401?
I think so. The chapter I read recently, it was all about dedicating to enlightenment. It was, I think, called "The Merit of the Initial Determination for Enlightenment,"
Oh,
and
that's
that
very
one.
good too. This book is very, very short. Book 16, Religious Practice. Let's see. If you go to page,
Yeah, it's on 401.
I'm thinking about 402. I'm trying to find a section you could read.
Hmm.
Well, we'll ask people to, maybe we'll read it into a YouTube or something. So, religious practices, I mean, it's unlike the other books in this, it's like two and a quarter pages of text, so it's very, very short. Yeah, we'll have to leave this for later. When they're short like this, they're also very, very packed. Okay.
Mhm. And so, like, to give an example, what happened was I was eating something unhealthy, and then I said, "Oh, I am dedicating this to enlightenment." And my mind was like, "Why are you eating unhealthy if it's for enlightenment?"
You're
And
chewing up and
then,
dissolving uh, impediments. You're you're getting rid of obstacles. You're destroying that which is foul, right? I mean, there's a number of things you can do, right? While you're eating something unhealthy.
Mhm.
Better to eat something healthy, but you know what I'm saying? Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you did?
So what I did, what I noticed after that is now my mind is resistant to eating unhealthy because there's a decision to dedicate to enlightenment. So because there's a hypocrisy, if I eat unhealthy, then it's bad for the body, then why am I doing it if it's for enlightenment?
Very good. So this is
So,
called your evolution. Now you're evolving. And the reason I didn't like say, no, you shouldn't eat unhealthy, right? Or no, you shouldn't mix unhealthy food and spiritual practice is because of exactly that. And so what you're describing is the evolution of consciousness and a
mhm,
maturation of the heart, mind, body, and soul, the tonal. Because after doing that,
mhm,
you just don't particularly feel as much like eating bad food, right?
mhm,
Because there's, as you notice, there's the hypocrisy there. But you're not doing it to impress
mhm,
somebody else. You're not doing it to get favor from God. You're not doing it to get ahead. You're doing it because you're doing it. And because you're sincere, you notice the hypocrisy. Sincerity is very, very rare in this world, right? I mean,
mhm,
sincere honesty with oneself and with the practice is actually very rare. And it's always, as far as I know, always required for waking up. Always. So what you're noting is the evolution of sincerity too. So you'll turn
mhm,
away naturally from things that aren't contributory. And instead of
mhm,
forcing it, which so many people do with their religious practice, I'm going to force it. I'm going to force meditation. I'm going to force this and that. Instead of doing that, cultivate power, which it sounds like you're doing, right? You see the
mhm,
difference?
mhm,
It's a from the outside, it may not look like much of a difference, but it's a huge difference inside.
mhm,
Nothing is more powerful than the way.
mhm.
And the way for
Yeah,
humans
because
is
I
to
see,
accord with that way, which is the same thing as according with the will of God, right? I mean, it's just different language.
yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. I think this is very good, actually. Okay, good.
Yeah. I have other questions that I wanted to ask.
Do you
This
want to
one is
say more
from
about
the last.
your? Do you want to say more about what your experience was with in that evolution, where you go from I don't know. I just want to make sure you have a chance to say everything you want to say.
Yeah, so what I noticed was that now mind is more compliant in doing the things that I think are better for me because because it's a practice dedicated to enlightenment. So doing something bad is it creates like cognitive dissonance in the mind. So
Correct.
mind is compliant.
And then avoiding the cognitive dissonance or avoiding the struggle in the mind, you thereby align yourself with the way, and everything becomes easier. Do you see?
Hmm.
Are you following me? What I'm saying here? So the
Yeah,
mind is the
yeah.
biggest obstacle to spiritual practice. The mind, clearly, the mind throws up
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of things. You know,
Hmm.
you sit down and meditate, and all of a sudden there's a whole like riot of thoughts and this and that, random impulses and this and that, and so if you could put the mind to the side, which is what you must do when you align with the way, when you just practice for the sake of practice,
Hmm.
then you've that is how you handle the mind. And I wish I could, man, there's so many people in this world, I wish they could just understand that because so much of their suffering is because they haven't learned that yet. You see?
Yeah.
Good. And then your life turns into spiritual practice. And then you begin to realize, well, wait a minute. It's not spiritual practice. I'm a spiritual being. I'm a spirit having a human experience, not a human having a spiritual experience. And it flips. And poco a poco, bit by bit, you get there. So good. Excellent, in fact.
I think that's pretty much what I had on that so far.
Okay.
My other question is about is from one of your last videos, where like you mentioned, when people are in severe pain or like near to death, then there might be sometimes there's a contraction. And then give an example where Jesus, when he was being crucified,
Before you get to
said,
the,
"Oh
I
God,
have to
why?"
correct you. Did I say near to death, or did you say near to death?
So I don't remember the exact words
I
about that,
didn't
but
say
we're
near.
talking
I did
about
not
death.
say near to death because that wouldn't
Okay,
be true necessarily.
okay,
But
okay.
go ahead.
So,
I just have to.
good.
When people project things that I said or they add their own part to it, if it's significantly wrong, then do you
Mhm.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
Now
Yeah,
keep going. Keep going.
yeah, yeah. So it seems to me that when people are in severe pain, or like when I haven't experienced death yet, but I think it might be
Yes, you
a
have
lot
actually.
more.
You have experienced death of a sort. When you came out of your mother's womb, you experienced a major death.
Mhm.
What you're calling death of your body is actually birth into
Mhm.
reality. Okay, so just again, you said something that's not true. I mean, death is not when the body dies. Death is when the spirit enters this world. Is a more accurate way of saying it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I don't want to confuse people
So I
too
think
much. But go ahead.
Got it. So I think then the first question is, at the time of death, is there really too much pain, or is it like more relaxing? And from what I've read from the near-death experiences that people have had, they felt relaxation rather than a lot of pain and like those things.
Well, that's not death.
But I
That's
don't
near
know.
death. Okay, that's very different.
Yeah, yeah, that's weird. Yeah. So I don't know whether there's actually that much pain or that much like suffering at that time or not.
At
But it
what
is a
time?
contraction around the time of death.
See, you're conflating all kinds of many things happen as you approach death, and you can't all conflate them into one like question mark. Do you see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And plus, what you're calling death is actually liberation, and so
Hmm.
it's we got to get our language straight and get the question straight.
Hmm.
What's the question? I think I know what it is, but I
So
want to
it's
make
like,
sure that you understand that your view of death is way oversimplified, way oversimplified.
mm,
And I would recommend. There's a lot of things I could recommend, but you'll come
mhm.
across them anyway. But keep going.
But so my question is mainly around just like Indian like spiritual practice where these like teachers say to disciples that you should practice like you should practice uh, so much that when you are dying, at that time you are able to remember God, and that will get you mukti or like nirvana. Because if you don't have that, then you will continue in the cycle of birth and death. So I was thinking that if people go into contraction at the time of death, then it won't be feasible. Then, so first of all, there's a big question mark whether what the gurus are saying is even true or not. That there's a cycle of birth and death for a soul kind of thing. And if there is, then logically it doesn't make sense that people can do all kind of shady things in life, and then at the time of death, if they can just remember God, then everything will be solved for them. And logically it doesn't
Who
make
says that
sense.
doesn't make sense? I just want to get
That's
the
what I feel.
epistemology straight here. Who says that?
Yeah.
Who says that you can't live
That's
a
like,
crazy life and then find God at the before death? You know, at the few minutes before death. Who says that?
no one says that.
All
Yeah,
right.
no
So
one
you're
says that.
saying that. So you're adding that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
don't add things, and that's the question.
Okay. So I think my main question was around, is this like this Indian practice? Is there a legitimacy to it, or is it just like
Legitimacy to what
something
part?
that if people can somehow remember God at the time of death, then like they can get maybe enlightened or something. I don't know what can happen, what are the possibilities, but something good or beneficial can happen for them.
Okay. I think I know the problem. You're concentrating on the body and then using the body to mark a particular phase or stage of consciousness being liberated from the body.
Yeah, yeah.
So now what's your question?
I think the question is very speculative for me because I still haven't figured out
So you
whether it's a
need
soul
good,
or no soul.
good. So you need more study, more contemplation, right? Or more
Yeah.
contemplation and study. You know, in this channel and this endeavor, we're talking about living a good human life, right?
hmm
Living a good human life where you have a chance at peace and a chance at happiness and permanent joy and a minimum of unnecessary suffering, right?
hmm Yeah.
So that's a different goal than trying to get people to reform or behave or go along with the guru or teacher or pastor or priest or etc. I mean, for example, there are some Muslims that believe that if you die as a martyr fighting for the faith, and not just Muslims, Christians too, historically, that you will automatically go to heaven, and the Vikings, you'll go to Valhalla, depending on what kills you. Do you believe
hmm
that?
Same thing. I'm not able to believe
Okay,
that.
good,
It
good,
doesn't
good.
make sense.
So all I would do is add another opinion. And we're not in the business of offering opinions. What we're in the business of is helping people understand for themselves, because that's the only thing that matters anyway. I mean, you've read 1,000 books with 1,000 different opinions on on death, probably already in your life.
hmm
Maybe not 1,000,
hmm
and all those are as opinions. And
hmm
Stephen, to this day, you're not sure, for example, about the. It sounds like you're not sure about the Indian notion of reincarnation.
hmm
Well, do all Indians believe in reincarnation? I mean, does Nisargadatta talk about reincarnation? Does what's his name,
No.
Ramana Maharshi? Does he talk
Uh,
about reincarnation?
no.
Does the Dalai Lama?
No.
No, he does
I
sometimes.
mean, so for
Sometimes he
Dalai
does. It
Lama,
depends on who
there
he's
was a
speaking to. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. There's a tradition in I think in their religion where they find a new teacher before the current one dies, and they're able to pinpoint and select that kid and then groom them as a teacher.
Say this again. Who would do this?
So, so in their tradition, I think so. Whoever
Whose
is the head
tradition?
of
Whose
the
tradition?
Dalai Lamas, like Tibetan, uh,
Yes, yes. But
yeah,
he says that he'll be the last Dalai Lama, right?
yeah, he said that,
But I'm more
yeah.
interested. Okay, but in Hinduism, what is the range of opinions on that subject?
On Tibetan idea of reincarnation
Yeah,
or Hinduism idea.
on the notion of reincarnation. How wide a range of opinions are there within Hinduism?
Within Hinduism, there are like two broad categories. One is the soul thing, which is like soul travels from body to body, from one bird to the other,
All
and then
right.
eventually it gets liberated. The other school is Vedanta, which is non-dualistic teaching. They don't believe in the soul thing. Those are more
Are you
aligned with
sure?
the Yeah, I think Advait Vedanta is like we
Do
are
they
God,
believe consciousness
and
comes from
then
the body?
no.
Could you move over this way, please? All right, then if they don't believe in a soul or a spirit, and they don't believe consciousness
Mhm.
comes from the body, then what are we talking about here?
So for them, yeah, so they don't talk about reincarnation.
They don't talk about it, but you just said they didn't believe in spirit or consciousness or something that's independent of the body.
So they believe in consciousness, which is like all-pervading God, and everyone is God manifesting in this way in the world.
So God and consciousness are the same thing.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Who creates the universe? All right,
So
I don't
that
want to get into
question.
too much of that, but so all I'm saying is that these are things you have to think about for yourself. You have to use everything you've got. This is the most important questions you can deal with: the meaning and purpose of life, and who are you really? And do you really have a spirit? Is there really such a thing as consciousness independent of the body? But there's another caveat or another complication. All of the things that you've described thus far depend on time.
Mhm.
Now, did time? Let's do the scientific version. Did time exist before the Big Bang? What do
If it
scientists say?
existed after the big, uh, so they say Big Bang, I think it's the start of everything.
So,
But
so it's the beginning of time.
yeah, but logically it doesn't make sense
Well,
to
yeah, there's a
me
lot of
that
things don't
if
make sense in science in the 20th and 21st centuries. A lot of things don't make sense. But now let me ask you: do you believe time is a real feature of reality, or do you believe it's a construct of the mind and of being in this particular human experience?
I think I'm open to the idea that time is a feature of this universe or whatever this
It's
reality
emergent.
is.
It's emergent. Obviously, it's emergent
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's relative for
But
one
but
thing, right?
yeah, but I can't say that it's absolute because I only know this reality.
You
But there
can't
could be
say what's
other.
absolute.
The time is absolute in all the universe, in all the reality. I can't say that. I have only experienced this reality
Well, yeah,
from
but you
this
could
one.
listen. You could listen to people like Einstein. You could, take physics 102 or 101 or whatever,
Mm,
and they'll tell you that
mm,
time is relative, and the amount of time depends on how fast you're moving, and
mm,
beyond that, these days they're saying both space and time are emergent. That's just using
mm,
quantum mechanics. I mean, we can
mm,
go into details about that. I'd love to, right? But
mm,
there are many things that we see and hear and feel and so on and so forth. They're just by virtue of having these bodies. They have nothing to do with truth, ultimate truth, or scientific truth.
mm,
And I suspect that time is
mm,
going to be one of them. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of them. And just like space, it's going to be thought to be emergent, that it's created by the
mm,
brain, the human
mm.
brain or the animal brain or something like that. So these are things that you could approach that way. But again, I want to do an ad. Sorry, folks. Remember what's the name of the chapter on exactly this subject, the question of time? It's called oh boy, what's it called? Lifespan. So I just want you to listen to this.
Mm.
905, unless you want to read it.
Mhm.
Here, let me just go to some. Okay, so 905. So the thing that's fascinating is that, and this is the point that I'm actually, one of the major points I'm trying to make, is by direct perception, enlightened humans were able to understand what modern physics is just now beginning to tell us, right? In the last 100 years or so, since quantum mechanics.
Mhm.
No, that's not it. I got it wrong. Lifespan. Why don't you read Lifespan? It's one paragraph long. Read it very slowly, and read it as if you're trying to get people to understand, each sentence. Okay, just read it.
Got it.
So the other book this is the day of short books. This book is 1 page long. Lifespan. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is book 31, Lifespan. Then the enlightening being, Mind King, in the congregation, said to all the enlightening beings, offspring of Buddha, one eon in this world endurance, the field of Shakyamuni Buddha, is a day and a night in the world bliss. The field of Amitabha Buddha, one eon in the world of bliss is a day and night in the world vestment, banner. The field of the Buddha, adamant. One eon in the world vestment banner is a day and night in the world wheel of speech, which does not roll back. The field of the Buddha, lotus blossoms of sublime light blooming. One eon in the world wheel of speech, which does not roll back, is a day and night in the world free from defilement. The field of the Buddha, banner of truth. An eon in the world free from defilement, is a day and night in the world good lamp. The field of the Buddha, lion. An eon in the world good lamp is a day and night in the world subtle light. The field of the Buddha, treasury of light. An eon in the world subtle light is a day and night in the world hard to surpass. The field of the Buddha, blooming lotus of light of truth. An eon in the world hard to surpass is a day and night in the world adorning wisdom. The field of the Buddha, light of all spiritual powers. An eon in the world adorning wisdom is a day and night in the world mirror light. The field of the Buddha, moon knowledge. This succession goes on past a million zillion worlds. An eon in the last of these worlds is a day and night in the world supreme lotus, the field of the Buddha supreme in goodness, which is filled by the enlightening being universally good, and the great enlightening beings engaged in the same practice.
Okay, the point I want to make with that passage is that our minds don't think that way normally. Our minds don't think in the terms that a day and a night in one world is a million years, or 20 years, or 20 million years, or 20 quintillion years in another world. But reality has to be set up like that. Einstein showed that to us, right? And also, it's all a subjective matter, right? It depends on which world you're talking about. Do you see what I'm saying? The point is this: this book is designed to help you think in that way. And so, literally, 18 centuries before Einstein, these Buddhists understood the relativity of time. Is that loud and clear? And so that's one accomplishment, and that right there is remarkable. More remarkable than that is not only did they do that, but they devised a method to teach. Now, you're not going to get it from one pass, but if you read that chapter repeatedly, what happens is your mind starts to know it. It starts to understand it. It starts to be able to operate in a manner in which it does not usually operate. And your world becomes enlarged, and your understanding of reality becomes enlarged. Right? So to have a tool that helps you, that teaches your mind now to think in another way altogether, is a hugely remarkable thing, and virtually unacknowledged in the modern world. That there are tools like this that will cultivate, develop, and free the mind so it can more closely apprehend reality. That's why I keep harping on this book, because we need it now. With all this AI and all this, virtual reality, and now multiverses, and time is emergent, or at least relative, and material things don't exist in the way we thought they did, and particle physics is falling apart because, you know, it's just a model, right? There's nothing there. No one's ever seen a proton or seen an electron. And quarks can't even exist unless they are in certain configuration. And so these are just ideas. And we're taking these ideas as physical laws, and that just fell apart with quantum mechanics, right? Mm-hmm. So especially now in the 21st century, we need something like this. And it was prepared for us by geniuses, spiritual and geniuses and psychological geniuses going way back, just like they were watched out for. Mm-hmm. Now, do we call that, what do we call that? If somebody can lay down groundwork for somebody that isn't going to come for another 500 years, the way the Sufis do, for example. Well, I call it remarkable, and I think it's very difficult. I mean, so you can see why the idea of reincarnation arose among some people. Mm-hmm. And the idea of eternal life, well, then that Jesus talks about, well, when he says heaven, what does he mean, for example? All I'm saying is that every woman and every man has to understand. See, it does no good for me to say something that time is relative or time is emergent if your brain can't do it. Do you see what I'm saying? And so what this text is for is to cultivate your brain to where it can do it. You don't have to be, you know, an Einstein or a, you know, Planck or a Dalai Lama or a Zen monk or whatever. This allows you to, this does it in another manner altogether. And I'm speaking now as a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a neurobiologist. I'm trying to bring whatever authority people are willing to cede me, you know. I'm trying to say, take a look at this, understand this in the context of our current world and our current best scientific understanding. At least do that. And I maintain, and I'd love someone to, you know, argue with me about it, is that we don't have psychological instruments that are this sophisticated, I mean, that I know of, until we get to the Sufis, you know, and pretty much the Middle Ages, 500 years later. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me do my little diatribe. I'm hoping that, you know, in 100 years, maybe 200 years, this will be common knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I have questions from Avatamsaka as well.
Good. In the time we have left, let's do it.
Yeah. So this one is from page 380.
Okay.
This one is, I'll just read the verses. It says, I just read the one above it as well, just to for the context.
What book is it?
It's Avatamsaka 380 Eulogies on Mount Sumeru.
Okay, good.
14.
All right, go ahead.
So it says, then the enlightening being true wisdom, empowered by the Buddha, looked over the 10 directions and said in words, I'd rather suffer the pains of hell while able to hear the name of Buddha than to experience boundless pleasure without hearing the name of Buddha. The reason for suffering in the past, over countless eons, revolving within birth and death, is due to not hearing the name of Buddha, not deluded about things, realizing them as they truly are, detached from all compounded forms. This is called unsurpassed awakening.
The present is not compounded, nor are the past and future. All things have no signs. This is the real body of Buddha. If one can see this way, the profound truth of things, then one can see all Buddha's reality body in its true aspect. Seeing what's true as true, seeing what's not true as untrue, such ultimate understanding is the reason for the name of Buddha. So, a great passage. So tell me what your question is, but I want to comment on it also.
Yeah, my question is, first they say initially revolving within birth and death, like they say in reincarnation, and then later
You're
they say
absolutely right. You're
this,
absolutely right. Revolving in birth and death. Good.
yeah,
So that might should help
and
you
then
with
they
your
say,
reincarnation, maybe.
yeah, and then afterward they say that there's no, like, present is not compounded, nor are the past and future. All things have no sign. This is a real body of Buddha. And
That's
I'm
the
pretty sure they
real
also
body
say,
of Buddha. That's the real body of Buddha.
yeah, that's a real body of Buddha.
This is the body
So,
of Buddha. These clouds, these trees, these magnificent colors, the grasses and the birds. The body of Buddha. Right?
yeah,
Isn't that what it
I
says?
just don't, yeah, yeah. So I just don't understand what revolving within birth and death they are talking about.
Okay. Let me try. All right. Do you know what the Mahayana vow is? The Bodhisattva's vow?
For, from Mahayana or the
From the
general
Mahayana, from the
Buddhist?
Mahayana, yes.
No,
Okay.
that I don't know.
Basically, one resolves to become enlightened. Okay?
Hmm.
And having attained that enlightenment, one also states that one will continue. Why don't you, let's take the best version. Can you get in maybe the Stanford Encyclopedia? We read it, or the Dalai Lama's website or something like that. Get the real thing. The notion is that bodhisattvas come back to this world to enlighten other beings until all sentient beings are enlightened.
So I see 8 Mahayana precepts.
No, those are the precepts that go to the bodhisattva vow. You got to search for vow.
There is a wiki page on Bodhisattva vow.
All right, never mind. You can't trust Wikipedia. Anyway, so look.
Yeah.
If you look at the Buddhist scripture, I think what you're going to find is that once someone becomes enlightened, they exit the circle of birth and death. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is birth and death? Were you born this morning when you woke up? In a manner of speaking, you were.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that nothing's compounded. So these cycles of birth and death, yes, it could mean 80 years or 70 years or 100 years of human life, but it can also mean you're born into one state of consciousness, and you may die in that state of consciousness and then emerge in another state of consciousness, which is effectively a different world in one way. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You can. So birth and death are the words that you need to remember. How in the beginning it was a difficulty because you were talking about death, but I think you meant birth, and
Mm-hmm.
so the cycle of birth and death refers to much, much more than just dying your body and getting cremated or whatever, dying
But
of your body.
yeah.
So circle of birth and death is every time something arises. All I'm trying to see, this is again where the book is very, very useful. Repeat your question again. I think you're trying to find out whether it says there's reincarnation or not.
So from
Okay,
what I
so
have read, there's no.
from what you have read, but what if use is what you have read? I've read all kinds of things. I've read about the Big Bang Theory, that people believe that for a century. Right? What you've read does not matter. What you know is what matters. Now, birth and death, all I'm trying to say to you is that birth and death, the cycles of birth and death is a much more complex subject than, your physical body, this thing, dying,
Mm-hmm.
finally. And even that's not
Mm-hmm.
finished because in the Mahayana, there's this notion that you return to this earth
Mm-hmm.
for the welfare of all beings. This is Jesus, right? This is Jesus. So when Jesus was resurrected, was he born or did he die? I mean, we're speaking, in that language now.
I mean, until a few years ago, I thought that he
Excellent. Good.
manifested. Yeah.
Okay, so whatever you thought a few years ago, and if you think something different or you have different questions about it, then you've made progress. Again, this is not an opinion factory. We're not trying, it is something much far more sophisticated, far more powerful, and far more useful than opinions. And for you to take other people's opinions because they wrote them in a book, that doesn't make any sense in any endeavor, right? There's just too much garbage out there. So as you grow in understanding, these questions will change. So contemplate it. Contemplate it. And that contemplation is contemplation meditation, right? It's a paramita. But no one can do it for you. This book can help you. The Zen books can help you. The teachings of Jesus can help you. There's all kinds of things that help you. But nobody gets to the spirit through somebody else unless it's a Christian, and that's a whole article of faith, right? Or something like that. But Jesus taught at all kinds of levels, right? So let's see, can I make this any clearer? The sentence, nothing is compounded, that didn't make you think, wait a minute. Do you remember the sentence in the passage? That's that's an interesting question. Nothing is compounded. What the hell does that mean?
So for me, I was thinking that the way I was born, it happened from a very like semen and egg thing, but then there was nothing there, and then suddenly I was there. So there's no start as such, and then things are compounding. And
Were you born?
I mean, the body.
Okay. Are you the body?
So, other than the brain, I know I'm not the rest of it. But other than the brain.
You don't know the brain either. Okay, I know the brain. I've studied it my whole life. You're not going to find it there either. Okay, this is much more mysterious, much more fabulous a universe that we find ourselves in here. Like, you have no idea how gorgeous the whole thing is. So you need to ask the question, was I born and am I going to die? Or have I been looking at this the wrong way the whole time? No one can answer that for you. You got to answer it for yourself. But you'll get there, especially with the progress you're making. And so on one hand, you want to know, but you're not, it's subtle. It takes a refinement of the cognitive, refinement of the mind to let these things percolate. And so that's why reciting the sutra is so great, because there it starts to open it up, and your ego, it's real hard for your ego to get in the way because you have to read the words. And so you hear these crazy things like the flower bank world with emerald grasses and sapphire trees and diamond clouds or whatever. And that starts to loosen things up a bit. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you realize that those jewels are just pointers towards the source of beauty, which is the source of truth, which is the body of Buddha, which is God. And then your relationship to the universe starts to change and evolve. Something along those lines. Okay? Nice work, sir. Anything else before we stop?
I
We can get one more for the Avatamsaka. One more from the Avatamsaka? Or anything?
We can. Yeah, we can do one more from the. Actually, I have a more contemplative question.
Okay, good.
I was thinking about what is attachment, because attachment is a big deal, and to me now it seems that attachment is just a state of thoughts and feelings that arises, but if I can keep my distance, it dissolves pretty quickly.
Good.
That's what
Good.
It's.
And is it attachment or is it reciprocal attachment?
What do you mean by reciprocal attachment?
Well, I'm reading some basic physics, and one of the laws of gravity is that two objects will attract each other. Now, let's take a refrigerator magnet is attached to the refrigerator. Is the magnet attached to the refrigerator, or is the refrigerator attached to the magnet? Or both?
I mean, they both are. They were both attracted.
So now
to
think about that. Think about that in terms of desire and attachment and your physical body and your conditioning, and look to see whether we can find unilateral attachment anywhere in the universe. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can. I don't know. But just think. You see, you gotta. This is where the contemplation comes in. And there's nothing better for a man or woman to do with their life than try and know truth, God. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we can make progress by many routes, but these are some of the best ones that I found. Okay, sir? So now look at attachment. Mm-hmm. Right? And I know what you mean, but you've created a construct in your mind. Oh, I'm attached to delicious food. A nice, I don't know, juicy piece of buttered bread, right? But then you have to ask yourself, is it me or is it my body that's just conditioned or designed to want fat? What does that have to do with me? Mm-hmm. So just keep going, I guess is what I'm saying. Because maybe it has to do with your body and has nothing to do with you. Or maybe it's something your mind has learned to be attracted to. Or maybe it's part of the natural, pardon the English, but animalistic desire for reproduction that's baked into every cell, living cell. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or something else, but sort it out. Okay, sir? All right, good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Namaste. Adios.
Well,
Take good care.
Adios.